All right, this week on Current Affairs Taiwan, I think you are looking into the future.
Let us examine the crystal ball. Today on the show, we have the debate, the presidential debate, and we talk about the future of the KMT if Hangeuls Yu loses the election and tries to become the chairman. And we also talk about polls. Yes, and what else do I see in here? Oh, some discussion of KMT election tactics, especially down south. Should be a fun show. What do you think, Crystal Ball? Oh, the snow is kind of limp today.
That's amazing, Mike. You can see into the future.
I see my hair growing thinner day by day.
So if you sponsor the show, you too can get stock tips from Michael Turton. All right, welcome to Current Affairs Taiwan. I'm Donovan Smith. This is Michael Turton. All right, what do we got up today? What do we got going on today?
We got a lot going on. There was the presidential debate this week.
There was.
There's some very interesting polls going on.
That's right.
There's the Guo Taiming, Terry Go, the head of Foxconn and one who desired to be the presidential candidate for the KMT. He's still out there. And Ko-Wen-ja is making snappy comments, and Hangeuls Yu of the KMT was front and center at the debates. So where do you want to start today? Let's start today with this. The island is suffering a island-wide blood shortage, and if you have a chance to go give blood, please get out there and do it. The whole nation needs it. Also, I'd like to wish everyone a Happy New Year. Oh, wait, I'm 2 days early. Sorry, I'm suffering from premature congratulations. Okay, so where do we start with? Well, you had some very interesting things to say about the uniforms even before we get into the debate.
Sure,
the DPP and KMT uniforms.
Yeah, so if you check us out on Report.tw.
That's Report.tw.
That's Report.tw again. All right, so on Report.tw, I've been doing these Taiwan quick takes, which are basically sort of short, almost articles, a little less polished than something I'd send out for publication. But they're quick, timely on what's going on during the day. Now, what's happening is that right now, if you look at the two, right now there's Hangeuls Yu and his team have started wearing these blue bomber jackets. They're military style jackets. They're clearly military designed. And then also, at around the same time, Zhuoshui River, the DPP party chair, and a lot of the people on the DPP side, I haven't seen Tsai Ing-wen wear one yet, but just about everybody else seems to be wearing them now, are green military-style bomber jackets. So now the DPP one, they say like 2020, and then they have a little insignia, which looks like it's really cheaply made and not very well fastened on. But they're selling these. If you donate 2,020 NT, you get one of these jackets. So they're cheap. And then on the patch, it says Taiwan and what looks like a bird over some water, like a rising bird of some type. Anyway, so that's the DPP one. Now the Hangeuls Yu one has a big H on the side, presumably for Han. And then he has, which is kind of clever, like a tag, which says Iron Han.
Iron Han.
A pun on his name. And then, very alarmingly, do you want to describe this?
It has a Spartan helmet.
Mm-hmm.
It appears to be an ancient Greek helmet, but it appears to be Spartan.
That's the implication there, yeah.
And I was looking at it, and I thought, oh, and look, there's a KMT flag kind of wrapped around it there.
Mm-hmm.
And then today, Donovan said to me, no, Michael, that's not a KMT flag. That's a river of blood.
Yes, I'm
pretty
pretty sure
closely,
it is.
It's a river of blood flowing underneath that helmet. It's very scary.
Very scary. And then there's KMT/ROC insignia. I'm not sure which one it is because there's a gap on the amount of blue surrounding it that is the difference between the two. Anyway. So yeah, it looks like a river of blood. We both looked at it closely, and that's all we can figure out. Now the Spartans are known for their fight to the death ethos. Fight to the last man, fight to the death. That helmet over a field of blood, a river of blood seems, I don't know, what's the adjective you go with here?
Scary. I'll just stick with scary.
Yeah. Okay. But the thing is that clearly what both parties are doing, and the DPP in their ad for selling the jacket and for to raise the donations, because it's a gift with a donation, they explicitly say, they explicitly talk about how they defend Taiwan, defend the sovereignty. So they're very explicit that this is a jacket they want to associate it with protecting. It's a military style jacket, and they want to associate it with protecting Taiwan and Taiwan's sovereignty.
Right.
So both of them are, and of course Han has been campaigning and repeatedly going on. He says this election determines whether the survival of the Republic of China.
Well, that's code, right? He's talking to his Deep Blue followers. What he means is this election determines whether or not we Deep Blues will continue to control politics on this island.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the striking thing for me about this is it indicates a level of desperation, of they're feeling the threat, and at the debate, of course, Han lashed out at the media, said the China threat was very boring and abstract. Abstract. Those abstract missiles pointed at us.
Yeah, that abstract aircraft carrier that sailed by the other day.
Strait.
Yeah.
Beijing's showing some real sensitivity there.
Yeah. Right before the election, of course.
So, how did the debate go? You had
I took some notes. Yeah, I took a whole bunch of notes, and I'm wearing the wrong glasses, so I'm just going to work from memory here. Basically, if you leaving aside the substance, just as their presentation, the way that they carried themselves, and that they addressed some substance, I thought both Tsai and Song did a pretty good job. Now, this wasn't like the policy presentation, which I wrote about and basically on Kerguelen Media and eviscerated all three of the candidates. It was the most mind-blowingly boring thing. This time there was some fireworks. This time it was a genuine debate. So initially they started out with some opening statements, pretty typical, and Tsai came out, talked a lot about, and she said, basically saying that that some people, obviously the the KMT, are saying that they're not putting a word on the threat. The threat is China. She was very explicit. China is the threat. She read from a letter from a Hong Kong student saying, "Don't trust the Chinese communists and don't fall into their money politics and all that." Song gave a pretty solid, and throughout his entire thing, he was also pretty straightforward, solid. He gave a good presidential. He seemed, both he and Tsai actually, I thought, seemed fairly presidential. And Song was, now the only thing about him though is that his presentation felt very much like it was 10 years too late,
at least,
or 15 years too late. His
too
presentation. His references to Sun Yat-sen and Zhang Jingguo. And, it was old school KMT. And essentially what he has presented himself as, and the People's First Party, is kind of a cleaner, more pure version of the followers of Sun Yat-sen, which the KMT is supposed to be.
That's what's her name, Hong Xiuzu, was saying in the last election. The KMT's gotten away from that.
Right.
And so one of the problems that after Chiang Kai-shek died and then Zhang Jingguo passed on, who inherited the Jiang charisma?
Right.
And at one point, Ma and Sung and a couple other people were vying for this. And actually, it never seemed to go down to anyone. And now here's Sung still trying to milk the dregs of that connection and that feeling. But no one in the current generation feels that way anymore.
Now, here's something. There's two things that Song kept going. Basically, he kind of was going on three major themes here. His themes were that basically that it's time to move away from pan blue and pan green, and I can work with both sides and choose me. I'm a cleaner, better character for the job. Okay, fair enough. Right. Another was he kept talking an awful lot about two other topics, which is He was very strong in defense of democracy and the press. And when Han went after the press during the second part of the question part, and he started slamming the press, Sung responded to that by saying, it's important to respect the freedom of the press and the media. And now, I suspect the reason he was going on and on and on about democracy and freedom of the press is because
he used to be the GIO guy whose job it was to shut down the press
Yep.
when they didn't report favorably.
The GIO being the Government Information Office. He was the official under Zhang Jingguo whose job it was to shut down the press during the Kaohsiung incident. During and after the Kaohsiung incident, he was the guy in charge of the GIO.
Well, I think also he's a good politician. So when Han jumps in against the press, Sung is right there saying nice things, and he'll get better media coverage for that.
Yeah.
That's probably both.
Now, Han's performance he was appealing to his base. That's really what he was doing. I can describe pretty much his entire presentation in 3 words: angry, defiant, and there was another word.
Loud?
No,
Cute?
It was angry, defiant,
witty,
and defensive. That's the third
defensive.
word. Defensive. Yeah, it was angry, defiant, and defensive.
So he's got ADD. Huh?
He does. Yeah. He's got ADD. Now, this is interesting because last year, and I remember talking about this or writing about it, I can't remember if it was in an article or just on Facebook, but one thing that I thought was very interesting about Han Guoyu's campaign last year was when he ran for mayor is that a lot of people kept trying to compare him to Donald Trump. And I didn't think it was a very good fit because Donald Trump had 2 tracks. On the one hand, he was presenting himself as a positive person being able to solve economic problems and all kinds of other problems, and that the economy would boom and that America would win and be great again. And he had the positive side. And then he had a negative side where he'd get angry, he'd get defensive and defiant, slam the press, all that stuff. And also stir up fear of immigrants and that kind of thing. I mean, kicked off his campaign with, Mexicans are rapists. I mean, that's, that's how he starts off his campaign. Now, Han Guoyu last year was only doing the positive stuff. He was very positive. He was very much about improving, effectively make Kaohsiung great again and improve the economy and everybody will get rich. And, so he was talking, he didn't go negative. Now he's almost completely flipped. Now he's almost entirely negative. And so during this whole thing, his entire presentation was largely, the DPP is corrupt. The DPP and Tsai has betrayed the nation. They're corrupt. Oh, have I said they're corrupt? Oh, they're liars. They're frauds. They're, went into Young, the internet influencer. And
they bought all the newspapers and they're
90% of the media is controlled by the DPP. And then when the press started asking their questions, he spent most of the time on 2 of the questions, Apple, and was it CNA or Liberty Times, basically just ripping the press, attacking the press.
Oh, yeah. What did he say when one of them asked him about his finances? Why are you asking me this? Why don't you ask me when I lost my virginity?
Yeah. My girlfriends before I got married. And, it was just like. Now, there's a couple interesting things that I thought that jumped out at me about Tsai's presentation. She repeatedly talked about how, and she references back in the Chen Shui-bian era and recently, and she's like, going all the way back to the election in 1995-96, people were saying if the DPP is elected, that will be the end of the Republic of China. She said, look, the DPP has been elected to power twice, and the ROC is still here. And she repeated that 2 or 3 times, which I thought was interesting. She repeated that, the Republic of China, basically her message was that Tsai Ing-wen and the DPP are defending the ROC. It's not gone.
Right.
And she did mention, Republic of China, Taiwan. She did use that catchphrase once or twice as well. So, just off the top of my head, that was what jumped out. Oh, and at the very end, Hangeuls jumped up, ran down, and shook the hand of the China Times, which is which is the company, which is owned by a company that gets large subsidies from China, and according to some press reports, they actually take instructions on some stories from China.
Yeah.
From the Chinese communists. So that was interesting.
But he didn't shake the UDN.
No, I don't think he did.
Oh,
and then Han broke the rules. He showed up with props and his cell phone. So I think his base will look at his performance and go,
yes, we love you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're taking it to them. And I think that if he was trying to win over undecided voters, he failed miserably.
Well,
but let me jump in.
Sure.
We're now at the 15-minute mark. We're going to take a quick break for our non-existent sponsors. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Please support our non-existent sponsor. Actually, we have a camera. We're using a Nikon, which allows you to only record 20 minutes at a time, and we are roughly a 30-minute show. So we add the little break there, and that gives you a chance to go to the bathroom. I guess it's an intermission. But, all right, you were about to make a very interesting point.
Well, I was going to say that when you're in an ideological world like Han and his followers live in, and you have to explain how your man Han, who's obviously the embodiment of everything good in the world, how he could possibly lose. That's right. How he could possibly lose could only be explained by conspiracy. So these claims that Han is making about the press being 90% owned by the DPP and the internet controlled by the DPP and the DPP government sending, government spies after him and all this stuff.
GPS tracking his car.
Oh, that's right. GPS tracking his car. That was a great one. That is just Han preparing his followers for the cognitive dissonance they're going to experience when their man, the embodiment of everything good, loses this election. And we were looking at polls today, and Donovan and I were watching them on the TV before the show, and Tsai is ahead in most polls by large margins. In some polls so large that if all of the undecided swing Han, then she will still win by 3 or 4 points. So
that's every single one of the undecideds, which is not going to happen.
No. And there was another interesting poll that came out today. The National Student Union polled.
But wait, Mike. Remember, Han told his followers to not speak to the pollsters. No. So he's definitely got to win.
That's right. That's what it is. Because the polls clearly make no sense whatsoever.
So that obviously is going to explain what you're about to,
Yeah, the National Student Union. Well, that's what all the Han people in the student union voted for Tsai Ing-wen.
Because Han told them to. That explains
So
it.
the National Student Union polled 11,000 kids, college students, some high school, college, probably 40-50% of voting age, right? And Tsai Ing-wen had 85% support in that group, and Hangeuls had about 4.7%. The really interesting thing that everyone noted was that in the party list vote, the number one party was the NPP with something like 27% support, followed by the DPP with 26% support, followed by the KMT, which was way down there.
No. The KMT way was down like there number 5 or 6.
At 2.9%.
The State Building Party? At what, 11%? Something like that? The Greens got about 4.5%.
Yeah.
Then the KMT came in at 2.99%.
It's ridiculously low.
Yeah.
So the demographics do not look good for the KMT right now.
No, because this generation, I don't know if they included, if they was only undergrads or whatever. So we don't know what percentage were voting age. But this is the generation that's coming in now. And if they rate the NPP as their most popular party, followed by the DPP, followed by the State Building Party, followed by the Green Party, followed by the KMT, that does really not bode well. When 3% of this generation supports the KMT, they don't have much of a future.
You can see how much out of touch the KMT, in this election, they've made a really strong conservative move, which you've discussed on the show. And people down south have been putting up photos on Twitter and on Facebook of these incredibly anti-gay ads that politicians are running down there.
gays, create more gays, don't let them have access to our kids, and
including on campaign banners themselves,
and on posters and everything. It's quite scary. But I haven't seen anything like that in Taichung, and no one's seen anything like that up north. Zhanghua, maybe.
Yeah. Rachel, actually, who's been on the show. He posted up something he saw, I think.
Okay.
But during the debate, now this is interesting, is Hangeuls, one of his questions to his fellow, because the candidates got to ask each other questions.
Right.
One of his questions is he asked the other two if they were religious.
Oh, what did they say?
Well, Tsai, according to the CNA translation, I interpreted it slightly different, but they're probably a little more professional, and, I'd had a drink or two. So,
shocked.
Basically, she said, according to their translation, that, we all believe in the gods, but there are more important principles that we need to concentrate on as candidates. I interpreted what you said as being a little bit more vague than we all believe in the gods, but rather we all believe in, the principles of, behind the faith or something like that. I don't remember the exact word. So,
right.
And Song gave a pretty straightforward answer. Of course, we all believe in this, but it's important, So both of them basically kind of lip service and then pivoted. I think Song stuck with the religion theme a little bit longer, but Han really went on for a little while there. He had a few sort of thematic things, and that was for a little while, even, during one segment for a little while there, it was all anti-press, and then it was religion for a while. Anyway.
Oh, that's a Trump-like move, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go to the religious base. And yeah, it does seem, Jenna wrote about this on Laura and Cha, the blog, that there's been a very conscious move on the part of some in the KMT, not all, to go very socially conservative. Now, both the DPP and the KMT have social conservative and social liberal wings. But this seems to be a very specific move. And I think it's particularly they're trying to peel off DPP voters in the center and the south.
Right, with this wedge issue.
Yeah.
So it's
possibly U.S. inspired.
Yeah, the U.S. inspired. Mm-hmm. Certainly U.S. funded, right? The U.S. organizations pumped a lot of money into Taiwan to fight the gay marriage bill here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this leads. We were also looking at yet another poll that came out in one of the magazines, the Excellence poll of Taiwan mayors. And Mayor Hou You-yi of the KMT, who is mayor of New Taipei City, was the leader among the 6 major municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's a very popular man, and you and I were speculating about what might happen in the KMT after the election.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that Han might be doing that both of us were thinking about is that he's running the election. He's fighting this election not so much to win. He probably can't win. And at some level, he has to realize that. But to get that KMT chairmanship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about this last week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if he becomes chairman of the KMT, you found a very interesting piece in Wealth magazine this week.
Yeah. Okay. So now keep in mind, this is one report. Okay. And in Wealth magazine, and it was quoting some pro-localization KMT figures, which were not named, but that they were strongly emphasizing that if Hangeuls becomes the party chair after the election, they want to form a Taiwan Nationalist Party. The KMT stands for the Chinese Nationalist Party, which is how they translate it. Could be the Chinese Nationalist People's Party. But anyway, the Chinese Nationalist Party, they want to create a Taiwan Nationalist Party, which in Chinese from the Zhongguo Guomindang, or KMT, to the Taiwan Guomindang. That would be what they're trying to do. Now, and then they would move there because they explicitly said that, the future going forward, otherwise we're going to keep getting beat by the Pan Greens, is to be, to set down Taiwanese roots. That was
to Taiwanese the party.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, so I thought this was a very interesting piece, and it was very specifically if Hangeuls becomes the party chair. Now, they also pointed out, though, that somebody else has already registered the name and has this party, so they can't get that name. So according to the article, they're looking around for maybe another name. So there's that.
Yep. Well, for years we've been speculating that this might happen. But
right. Now, can we trust this one article? They didn't quote who the red and the black factions here in Taichung. We know probably the Union factions. these guys have all lined up very vocally and explicitly behind Hangeuls, and these are the local guys.
Yeah.
So at this point, I don't know, but I do reckon if they get beaten or close enough to being beaten that they get a real scare and feel that Han was the reason that did it, they may change their minds, because they're all about the money and the power. And if they lose, and the KMT is losing all its money with the ill-gotten assets law,
right?
And they're losing it if they get their butts handed to them in the election, then they're losing power. So why not make a move?
Yeah, the aftermath of this election is probably shaping up to be more interesting than the election itself.
Yes.
Now that the election is looking more and more like the DPP is going to win.
Yeah.
So,
what do we got coming up?
The anti-infiltration law.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had some criticisms with that. Bob Cow on Twitter had said it was just that the DPP had rushed to get its homework done before the teacher's deadline.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. An undergrad who did their paper the night before. Something like that. Yeah. So by a lot of accounts, now there's two anti-infiltration laws that are out there. I believe the state building party also issued their own, but they're not in the legislature. So there's two in the legislature, one from the NPP, one from the DPP. By a lot of accounts, the DPP anti-infiltration law is not well thought out. I'm not a legal scholar, so but I'm hearing this from fairly positive,
intelligent people.
Yeah, intelligent people, and also some people who are inclined to be normally pro-DPP.
Right.
Now, the concern here is that if the DPP rushes something that's not a very well thought out law without input from other parties or other segments of society, it's going to be perceived or portrayed as being a vindictive anti-KMT or whatever. And I do think that as China has been ramping up its infiltration activities, I think people are going to become more and more aware of them, and I think they're going to become more and more afraid of them, and I think that the atmosphere is going to get more tense during this next administration. It looks like Tsai is going to win, and it looks like the DPP is going to keep their majority in the legislature. So if they got the legislature and the executive, and this law is not very well thought out, it could be implemented very badly. Even if it's not, if they don't have input from other sources or other parties, it's going to be portrayed as vindictive. And it might actually become so if the atmosphere turns toxic enough.
Right. And of course, if this law is in place and the KMT wins the presidential election and puts in an administration, how is that law going to be used then?
Right.
So these laws make me nervous.
Yeah.
They're well intended, but they make me nervous. And there's a good example of how complex things are was in the paper today that noted that a lot of the companies that are a lot of the organizations that are supplying pro-China content into the Taiwan election are being run by ethnic Chinese and Malaysians out of Malaysia.
Mm-hmm.
It's often difficult to identify which nation or which people. How are you going to do this?
Yeah.
It's going to be a very difficult thing to do in practice without raising the specter of authoritarianism. Yeah,
I mean, to give you an example, which is already widely known, we already know that the Want group, if the reports I think it was the Financial Times, respectable journalist, respectable publication, was quoting people inside the China Times organization as saying that on certain issues they look for guidance from the Chinese communists. Now, the Want group says, oh, no, the China Times is not getting any money from China. However, other parts of the Want group have been getting large subsidies from various Chinese authorities.
They maintain a website, a Chinese language website that gets content directly from Xinhua.
Yeah.
So
they're not subtle about it.
No.
And then, of course, a lot of the advertising in local publications comes from Taiwanese who are invested in China, who may or may not be getting money in China through possibly entirely legal methods, freebie contracts, or, they qualify deals, for, qualify for, an export subsidy or something. There's a million and one ways that they can, funnel the money in A, and it comes out B here in Taiwan buying an ad in the paper, that kind of thing. So it's tricky. It's going to be a very tough.
Just imagine every election, including this one and the previous one, businessmen in China are getting flights. They're getting paid to fly back by the Chinese government.
Yeah, that was something that was in Focus Taiwan today.
Yeah.
That somebody was quoted saying that, and it happened in the last election too.
Yes.
Yeah.
They got subsidies to fly back. So.
Yeah.
Is this Chinese infiltration? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I think we can guess what the intent of it is.
But who knows who they vote for when they arrive, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think on that happy note, we will wind up the show today.
Okay.
Thank you for checking in, and I hope to see you next week. And have a great new year, wherever you are.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at Report.tw.